We all know about the heroes, Mario, Link, Solid Snake, Cloud, Shepard, just to name a few, but oftentimes a great game has just as memorable of a villain, maybe even more so, than the hero. So why not give characters like Bowser, Ganondorf, or Ocelot some love? Villains often possess traits and flaws that give the player something to hate so that by the time the epic final battle shows up, we've built up enough of an attachment where the battle, and subsequent ending, leaves a lasting impression in our memories. So what noteworthy antagonists stick out in your mind? We'll talk about the greatest bad guys and gals in video games right here on Downloadable Content. And welcome to Downloadable Content. I am Brian, and with me, back from the land of sprites and dice, is Ben.
Hi, everybody.
And back, taking some time out of her busy programming from Kissart Studios, Tanya.
Hello.
But yes, we're going to be talking about gaming's greatest villains on this episode. So before we get into that, let's get all the mandatory plugs out of the way. You can get Downloadable Content a variety of ways. All episodes are on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, and you can get in contact with us on Facebook.com/DLContent, at Twitter at DLContent, on Tumblr at DLCpodcast.tumblr.com, or email DLContent1@gmail.com. Now that that's all out of the way, we'll get right into the discussion at hand. Gaming's greatest villains. I mean, there are plenty of video games that have very memorable villains. I sometimes think the villains are far more interesting than the hero. Usually villains have personality, where sometimes the hero can come off as incredibly bland. They're just there for the "I'll save you" sort of trope. And we have our classic bad guys, the ones that we grew up with, probably playing on an NES or Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, like Bowser and Ganondorf, Dr. Robotnik. He's not Eggman. I don't care what everyone says. I don't care that the rest of the planet knows him as Eggman. To me, he's Dr. Robotnik. Donkey Kong, back in the days before Donkey Kong Country. Mother Brain, if you've played Metroid. So there's just a few right there. Although Bowser, after 30 years, I'm convinced now just teams up with Peach and just trolls Mario.
I mean, that has to be the case. Bowser gets credit for longevity, but I mean, as far as being a villain, I wouldn't really consider him all that. Like, I'd be fascinated if we could find out, like, the actual official explanation behind all of his behavior and why Mario considers him enough of a threat on Monday to wreck his castle, but enough of a pal on Wednesday to go-karting with. But I mean, aside from that, unfortunately, because of the way that dynamic has sort of played out, it is kind of boring. I'm sort of like, oh, hey, it's a Mario game. You fight against Bowser. How original. Woo.
I have to agree, actually, on that. I think the whole Mario Bowser thing is tired. I think it's a very tired thing, and I think Mario needs a brand new villain that maybe him and Bowser could team up against and do it that way. Kind of like a Mario RPG type deal, except that obviously it's taken to a platforming level, but that's my thing.
I'd love it to be Luigi just for payback for 30 years of being in the shadows, second fiddle.
Yeah, you mean like his brief cameo as a bad guy in Super Paper Mario?
Yes!
As Mr. L?
Mr. L!
Yeah, well, that was certainly an unusual move on their part. But I mean, yeah, it's at least with something like, with Link and Ganondorf, the relationship is always at least consistent there. But with Mario Bowser, again, they go back and forth. It's sort of like, okay, this has been played out, and at least, for those of you who didn't finish Skyward Sword, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but they kind of expand a little bit more on the series' history, kind of by going back to the beginning with some bits that were brought up for the story there, which I thought was kind of nice to flesh out a little bit. But at the same time, it's like you're trying to keep these characters timeless, so you're not really going to do all that much to give them defined character traits beyond, like, good and not good. So that's, unfortunately, 30 years of the same games has meant that some of these iconic villains have gotten really sort of boring, sadly.
Which is why, I mean, at least for Nintendo, the rare times that they do vary it up, Tanya mentioned Super Mario RPG, where you have Smithy as the final boss, and with, Mario and Bowser are actually in the same party. Or even Super Mario Brothers 2. What was the name? Wart?
Wart.
That was the final...
Yeah, but that was also because that wasn't really set out to be a Mario game at the beginning, so...
Shh!
Oh, shit. Do people not know that? Oh, it's all... Wait, I can't even say it's a dream. Crap. You didn't hear me. Did not plan that. I just want you to know.
Oops. Well, now that you've given away the ending to both Super Mario Brothers 2 and Final Fantasy X...
Statute of limitations.
And Final Fantasy...
Oh, I didn't say anything about Final Fantasy X. You were the one who brought up Final Fantasy X. Statute of limitations has long since expired on Super Mario, and yeah. Anyway, so
oh god.
Dr. Robotnik, yes, he's kind of cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of like Bowser. At least, you're kind of impressed with what he manages to get done. Robotnik, I'm not even like, dude, what are you doing? Like, just what? Come on, like, stop it. Just stop. Shut it down.
It's like, enough already. I mean, Metal Sonic is more of a threat than you are. So it's...
Yeah, although, to be fair, somebody pointed out that he's actually, like, there are games segments where he runs faster than Sonic, or Sonic can't catch him. So I'm like, okay, well, dude, that's actually really impressive. You're the size of a whale, you clearly never exercise because all you do is float around in that little hover chair, and you can somehow outrun Sonic the Hedgehog? Like, why are you using robots? Just punch him in the face repeatedly and take over the world.
See?
So, again, just like, dude, what are you doing here? What's going on?
Just ask Robotnik to pee in a cup.
Listen, hey, PEDs are not illegal on Mobius as far as we know, okay? There's never been any official designations to say that he cannot be on whatever the hell. To be perfectly honest, he should be selling that shit, okay? Because he'd just make a ton of money if he was on anything.
That's true. I mean, take a look at his mustache. I mean, there's obviously something there.
Yeah, well, that's a whole separate, I don't even want to talk about his fashion sense. That's clearly just horrible.
Just all sorts of wrong.
Oh, that's the most evil thing about him, honestly, is the fashion sense.
And then you have, some of the lesser paid attention to franchises. Metroid, you have Mother Brain.
Sorry, that's my dog. You have to forgive that.
That's all right. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't recall Mother Brain barking.
That's the new expansion from for Other M. It's the DLC they're adding.
Your antagonist barks.
Yes. Well, hey, listen, that's more than I think Mother Brain says in most games, so,
Yeah.
It's still an improvement. At least with the Metroid franchise, though, there are... And I guess with the Zelda franchise, too, there are different villains. But at least with Metroid, they're at least consistently, like, the Space Pirates keep showing up. The Metroids keep showing up. Mother Brain keeps showing up. Ridley keeps showing up. It's not just you versus one significant antagonist, Yeah, they do play on repeat a bunch of the same characters, but they also mix it up a little bit with those same characters. you know?
Yeah.
Although I guess you could make the argument about Bowser and the Koopa Kids, but I mean, you know, aside from anybody who's memorized the NES manual, can you name any differences between like any of the Koopa Kids? Or if like I showed you 3 of them, would you all just say that thing that Bowser made somehow? Because I mean, aside from Junior, because Bowser Jr. obviously is his own little special sort of crazy. The rest of them, I think, are pretty interchangeable. So I don't really consider them like worthy opponents. Jump on their head 3 times and watch what happens.
I barely remember all their names. Never mind their personalities, because I never really, never really got into them that much. I mean, even with like Mario 3, when you were going after them and and on the airships and everything like that, it was just like, I don't know. I was just like, okay, 3 shots, you're done. All right, next.
Yeah, they're palette swaps. Like at least Ridley requires separate, a different tactic to kill than say some of the larger space pirates, than say the Metroid Prime. I mean, they're at least different villains in that sense. Like perfect example, Skyward Sword. So Girahim versus any of the other bosses, or versus say like a Ganondorf fight later on. Like, part of it was the control scheme, but it's actually a different fight. There are differences in how you deal with these enemies. So to me, that's a little more interesting than the 8 Koopa Kids who are just, palette swaps effectively.
More or less. Another one that I haven't played much of this franchise, Mega Man. I mean, Dr. Wily. He is kind of the antagonist for the series.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Well, I mean, see, Mega Man that's an interesting case because, like, yes, Dr. Wily is the classic and what you would consider the classic antagonist, but I mean, you get into the X series and you get into other spin-off type series, and and you've got different antagonists. You've got which I can't remember the name right now for some reason. Oh God, it's right in my head too.
Oh, the guy from the 4th one, right? There was a different doctor.
I can't remember his name life from me right now.
That's why we go to Wikipedia. To Lord Wikipedia.
Lord Wikipedia.
But
answer our prayers, oh Lord.
But I mean, everyone knows who Dr. Wily is.
Oh yeah, well,
Dr. Cossack, which is totally not. I'm not even gonna get into the name there.
This is Japan we're talking about. It's
shh. There's no racism. No racism.
No race.
Absolutely not.
Barrett from Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
You had something caught there. What game was it?
I forget. Final Fantasy 7. 7.
No,
yeah.
The Mega Man game in question.
Oh, that was Mega Man 4.
Mega Man 4.
Okay. Yes, we all know that Barrett is nothing more than a clone of Mr. T. We know that. You figure that out about 90 seconds into the game. It's
oh God.
But thank you, Wikipedia.
I forget his name. It's like on the tip of my tongue. I can see it in my head, but I can't remember the name.
Who?
Well, that's it. Well, yes, the name is Dr. Cossack.
What was the one in the X series? It was
Oh, Sigma.
Sigma. Thank you. Ah, wow, yeah. So I mean, you have like Sigma from like the X series, which, to me, at least to me, I think Sigma is a far greater type of villain than Wily could be.
Well, as I've only played and beaten Mega Man 1, enlighten me.
Well, I mean, you haven't played since you've beaten Mega Man 1, which, by the way, congrats on that, because that's a hard
God.
Mega Man 1 or Mega Man X? Oh no, you've only played Mega Man 1. We need to get you the rest of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. But Mega Man's not an easy series to get in there and beat.
You think?
No. And what did you think of your first Mega Man? While we're on the subject, real quick.
I enjoyed it. The fact that it was, it's incredibly difficult, number one, but the fact that I beat Mega Man 1 and I still haven't beaten the NES Ninja Gaiden, it's...
We'll get you on Battletoads next, it's okay.
you want to troll him because
quick side note about Battletoads. I was a friend of a friend gave it to a friend of a friend got it as a gift, and we were talking briefly about it. And I was like, have you ever played it before? He says, no, I never played it before, but I've heard really good things. I said, listen, he's like, I've heard it's incredibly hard. I said, so here's the thing. You're going to feel really good about yourself after the first 2 levels. Don't. Because starting with the 3rd level is when it really gets, where it really starts earning its reputation. But anyway, sorry. So back to Sigma.
but really getting into the Mega Man series as a whole. I mean, like you start out and you've got and Wily at first, like the first 2 or 3 games or so. I mean, like Mega Man 2 is my personal favorite. I love that game to death. Music is fantastic in that game. But like you kind of get the formula. It's very formulaic, which is why it works too. But on the other hand, in terms of characterization of a final enemy, a final boss, the antagonist of the entire series, he gets very formulaic. It's like, okay, he makes a bunch of evil robots. You gotta kill them. You go after him. He begs for mercy. No, after you defeat his final 2 forms, 3 forms, 4 forms, whatever the hell it may be. And that's pretty much how it goes with a Mega Man game. There's no real characterization there. There's no. I mean, there's a little bit of a backstory, especially as you get further into the games. You get more, story there. But it's even then, it's, you play Mega Man not for the story, really. You play Mega Man because it's freaking awesome to play and because, it's pretty cool. But, like, in terms of characterization, Wily just never really caught on to me as like this, this villain that just absolutely needs to be stopped at all costs. Now, Sigma is basically, I mean, in my view, in terms of like the robotic world, he's God. You're basically fighting the god of the robotic world, pretty much. It's pretty self-explanatory as you go through like the X series and whatnot, and it's just, now to me that's a villain. That's oh, okay, this guy, I don't want to give spoilers out, but this is a guy that literally, not to say he did, even though this is kind of a spoiler, but he literally does actually achieve his goals at one point. Wily never did. So it's, when a villain achieves their goals at one point, even if they're thwarted later, if they achieve their goal, that right there should mark them as a worthwhile villain to watch out for. That's somebody that you're like, holy shit, this guy did X and Z, and now I'm screwed 6 ways to Sunday. How do I deal with this? To me, that's like a Sigma or like a Kefka for Final Fantasy.
I was gonna say, branching off of that, it's rare to play a video game in which your main antagonist, your villain, actually achieves what they set out to do, and Kefka is the perfect example of that. Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, the original winged angel, before Sephiroth stole that from him.
Absolutely.
Kefka, early on, halfway through the game, he sets out and he actually destroys the world. And, your job is to, it's like, okay, he destroyed the world, the entire world is completely ruined, but your task is to now stop him from from progressing any further. And Kefka's the type of, his person, he's a complete nihilist. He doesn't give a shit. He has really no motive for what he's doing other than because he can. Which is probably one of the more dangerous types of villains. I mean, you get into later Final Fantasy games where you have, characters with mommy and daddy issues as the reason for being. I'm looking squarely at you, Sephiroth. But Kefka, I thought, was a far more interesting character than Sephiroth for that reason. Not to mention that Kefka has some hilarious dialogue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There is sand on my boots!
Son of a submariner.
That's just a translation. Oops.
I know the translation there, but still is
Son
great.
of a submarine. That's Nintendo.
So-
You can't say the word bitch.
Especially in an SNES game. Oh no, absolutely
No,
not.
no, certainly not. Absolutely not. And those half-naked sprites, cover them up.
No beer. People drink soda and get lightheaded. That's how that works here.
Yes, but Kefka is one of my all-time favorite villains. And, Final Fantasy does have its share of them. We've mentioned Kefka, we've touched upon Sephiroth. Final Fantasy VII was the first Final Fantasy game I played, and at the time, I really loved Sephiroth as a character, but as I grew older and wiser, and played the earlier Final Fantasy games, I went, oh, here's a bad guy without mommy issues. That's nice.
Well, I mean, Sephiroth. I know he gets a lot of heat, and I get that. And I mean, like you, when I was younger, and I was less experienced with gaming and whatnot. And when I played, I mean, my first RPG was all the way back on Dragon Warrior for the NES. So but no, I mean, but playing that game for the first time when I think I was like an early teenager or something, and I remember beating Sephiroth on my birthday, and when I was young, and we had a party, and I remember beating Sephiroth on my birthday. Everybody was all crowded around the TV, and they're all like, "Why didn't he say anything?" And even at that point in time, I didn't have an answer. So I'm like, "You're right. Don't at least even the most cliche villains in the face of the planet will say something at the end of the game, either touting their superiority or something." Sephiroth was quiet at the end of the game. There is no dialogue from him.
Nope.
And it just, you get all this build-up throughout the game in Final Fantasy VII, and, I'm a badass villain. I have mommy issues, but I'm still badass. I have a sword, and this, that, and the other thing, and I killed spoiler, I killed Aerith.
I think the statute of limitations has expired on Final Fantasy VII as well.
Even if it's not the statute of limitations, at this point, if there's a person who's on the internet who's interested in video games who doesn't know about that one, well, they haven't been on the internet that long anyway, so.
That's what I'm saying. But, it's like, he did all this stuff, and it's built up to him be this, classic, really, psychological type villain, and then all of a sudden, at the end, you get nada. You get zero for your, delving into that story. It's just...
Can I interject something, actually?
Sure.
Having never played the game, I actually like that, and I'll tell you why. The concept of the dramatic license, the hero delivers the final blow, and the villain stays alive long enough to deliver some, soul-shattering speech at the end, yeah, that shit gets old. It's nice that, this person's actually dead. Instead of wasting their last breath making fun of you, they just die. So I'm kind of, I can get why, as far as build-up and payoff, that really sucks from that sense. But it's sort of also just cool, it is now over. I don't have to deal with you anymore. Please go away. Or, I mean, again, without having played it, I recognize I'm not really in a position to offer too much of a viewpoint, but just an outsider's perspective on it.
No, I mean, I do get that, and to varying degrees, I even agreed to that to some extent. For some particular villains, for instance, if I'm playing, perfect example, if I'm playing Chrono Trigger.
Sure.
And I'm sure this is no spoiler. The final boss is Lavos. 3.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
I know. I can't believe that.
Huh?
And actually, there's another villain that actually does destroy the world. But it's when I'm playing Chrono Trigger, seeing what the character is of Lavos is like, and knowing it's just this unstoppable beast that never has a word of dialogue. I'm expecting to just go into the end and go, I'm just gonna destroy your shit. It's gonna happen, and that's just how it's gonna be. you're not expecting anything. I mean, we did get dialogue at the end, obviously, from the characters in your party, but like, except for Chrono. But yeah.
Nope, in one ending he does speak.
You're right, he does. In one ending, he does speak, yes, which I don't want to talk about that ending because it irks me to this day. But
there's 11 others for you to pick from. It's fine.
Yes. But for me, it's like, when you go through a whole game and, if you build up your main antagonist as one thing, but then deliver on another thing and call that, well, that's finality for you. It's not. There's a reason why, in my mind, they made Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII and Advent Children they should have done as a game, or they did as a movie, but whatever. But, there was more story there to tell. They left the game off on a cliffhanger, pretty much, which I like cliffhangers, don't get me wrong, but, you got to follow it up somehow or another. And, and the characterization at the end for Sephiroth is just not there. And we were promised that. Even halfway into the game, in the first disc, you're promised that, pretty much. And it just didn't deliver. And it always irked me to this day. It irked my friends when they were over my house. Even when as a kid, we were all kids, they even said, how come he doesn't have that dialogue? And it's like, I don't know. I've been wanting something at the end. He could even say, screw you all or something, but give me something. And it didn't work for that particular villain, in my opinion. Now Kefka, like you said, Brian, he's got probably one of the best one-liners I've ever seen in my life. His dialogue is it may seem at first like it's one-dimensional, but it's not. He is truly a nihilist. He wants not just to destroy everything that like every other villain face of the planet does. No, he wants to literally return everything to nothing. He wants
just because.
Not because he has mommy issues or daddy issues, or because a little birdie told him so. It's because he wants to. And in that respect, this is also why I love the Joker. As a villain, he reminds me of a lot from the Joker, from the Batman, from Batman series, and and it's like he's a cross between like Batman and like Apocalypse. It's just he's got this mentality that just it can't be rivaled. And another villain, I should say, that has that similar mentality. I think is, what was the name? Grandia 2, final boss.
Wasn't that the Pope?
Yeah, Zera. Yeah, Zera. That was his name, Zera. Pope Zera. I liked him as an antagonist. I liked him a lot, and I liked how they presented him. I liked how he went completely out of his mind and out of his gourd and just like gave himself over to Valmar. And I think that's what you want for an end boss. I will say this: his final form was horrific and stupid and unbelievably easy, but whatever. But as a villain, he worked. You could see why his motives the way they were, what they were. There was a payoff. And Sephiroth, there was no payoff.
There was a game that I had played very shortly after Final Fantasy VII when I was a kid. I was introduced to this game via my stepbrother. It goes by a little-known title called Metal Gear Solid. And
what game is that?
Yeah, it's very weird.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of Metal Gear Solid. I think it sold the PS1.
But yeah, wasn't an important system.
Small potatoes, but there were two enemies in that game that stuck out with me. Obviously, it was Liquid Snake and Revolver Ocelot. Who the Ocelot being the antagonist, who you'd learn for the entire series.
Yep.
And Kojima is very good at trolling his audience.
That's putting it lightly.
That is putting it very lightly. This is the same guy who wanted to call Metal Gear Solid 2 Metal Gear Solid 3, although whether that's true or not is a...
Because it would fuck with people.
Yeah. Ocelot, especially when you learn, when you get basically his origin in Metal Gear Solid 3, you go, oh, that's why he does what. Oh, okay, I get it now.
No, that's what that is.
That's what that is. And then Metal Gear Solid 4, where he's grafted liquids. Well, he has liquid Snake's arm.
It's gonna be, yeah. Stuff happens.
Metal Gear Solid 4. There are moments in the game you go, oh, what the fuck?
That was the whole game for me. Going, oh, what the fuck?
Although, that final battle with Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid 4 I thought was very fitting.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Very well done.
Very fitting.
I never got into the series, but I just want to interject real quick and say I never got into the series, but what I've seen and from what I've heard, that's what I've heard about that battle with Ocelot. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it was a very fitting sort of... The last game was just a combination of epic amounts of fan service and, okay, how do we resolve all these crazy plot threads that we just made more and more crazy while simultaneously also escalating and de-escalating all of them. It was a lot of things. It was just not concise.
And,
but I sorry, go ahead.
And you have basically these two old guys that have been enemies for a long time.
Before they were kind of brothers in a weird sense.
Finally coming to its resolution.
Yeah. It's many things. Simple is not one of them.
No.
I mean, yeah, I will agree. I thought Liquid was a great villain, although I'd be lying if I said that a big part of what made him great, if I didn't say that a big part of what made him great was the fact that he was British. Really, they just nailed that one. But Ocelot was also just, when you saw, like, especially as you saw the series unfold and you saw how he really manipulated everything behind the scenes and playing sides against each other and, trying to figure out where his loyalty was. That was the nice thing was, you came into the first game and you sort of figured you knew who Revolver Ocelot was. And then you don't even think about it, but you realize, he's the only member of the game, of the bad guys to actually survive. And then by the time the second game comes around, they give you enough and you start off and you think you know exactly what his motivations are, and then he completely throws that into the wrench. And then by the third game, you're like, all right, well, I don't even know, like, I know this is the same person who's going to grow up into this, but I don't know what his motivations have been to get him to this point. And then by the fourth game, you just have no fucking clue what's going on. So you always know he's the bad guy, and you always know he has a reason to do what he's going to do. You just have no idea what his reason is in the context, which means you can't predict what his motives are and what his moves are going to be. So that makes him the unpredictability of the whole thing. You always know he's bad. You always know he's dangerous. You just never know how dangerous or what his goals are. And that unpredictability makes him a really great villain, to me.
He's probably excellent at poker.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, he's going to make you think that he's got 5 completely different cards than what he actually has, or he'll just shoot you. I mean, that's
also a distinct possibility.
Also a very likely scenario, is that he will just shoot you.
Whereas, a lot of the other antagonists in the Metal Gear Solid series are mostly one-dimensional, I think. I mean, they all have stories and backgrounds, but for the most part, most of them are pretty, one-dimensional, not really entirely memorable, although some of the battles might be very memorable. The end, for one.
God, a fantastic fight. But yeah, that was what I didn't like about that, the Cobra unit in the third game, was that, like, they all had their quick little stories of why they were important, but they basically didn't show up. And this was true of the fourth game, too. Like, the major crazy bosses basically didn't show up at all with the main villain at any point. Like, they could have easily been replaced, and the cutscenes barely would have changed. And that's kind of frustrating. Like, to not see, like, those teams interact, to really see those characters bounce off of one another when they could clearly have had some great stories and great moments, that sort of is a letdown.
That is, now that I think about it, you're right. I mean, we definitely say, Ocelot has plenty of dialogue with the other characters in 1 and 2.
Yeah, a lot. But then you think about 3, Ocelot, a little bit with Volgan and with the boss. But, when you think about the Cobra unit, there's that one cutscene near the beginning of the game where they kind of all briefly interact. And then aside from the boss and the Sorrow, I don't think you see them ever together in a cutscene again. And then forget about Ocelot and the Beauty and the Beast Corps. That might as well have been 2 separate games for all the interaction they had in the story, which was to say absolutely none.
Yeah. That's very true. But Ocelot sticks out definitely as a very memorable villain.
Yeah, no questions asked. And again, Liquid had his moments, but he just, for his appearances, he just wasn't in the series enough to really qualify to be on the top tier.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Unless you count his arm. But
well, how can you not?
Unless you count his arm.
Which was somehow explained, because why not?
Why not? So I think the last one I'm going to close the first half with, because we're getting near that time, I'm going to shift to survival horror.
Your buddy Wesker?
My buddy Wesker. For those of you who've played Resident Evil. Do not get me started about the 6th game. That does not exist.
I agree. Totally agree.
Albert Wesker and Chris Redfield have a long, tortured, tangled relationship. It's practically a bromance by the 5th game. I don't know if any of you have read Shakespeare's Coriolanus, but, if you have, you'll get the reference. But Albert Wesker, starting in the first game, you think he's this, good, police officer. He's with the Raccoon City police officer, and you find out through his sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Curse you.
That, no, he's actually working for Umbrella. And then you find out later, no, actually, he's doing his own thing. But wait, there's more. And if you act now, an ice crusher.
I mean, yeah, Wesker then becomes very much in the same vein a villain that, just like with Ocelot, once you figure out that he's a bad guy, that was the only big difference between them at that point, if you look at it from that angle. Ocelot, you knew from the beginning was a bad guy. Wesker, you thought he was on your team at first, and while it started out as a silly little plot twist, when you saw what it morphed into and how he really was a central figure in games that he barely even appeared in. I mean, he was the driving force behind all the events of Resident Evil 4, and he makes a 30-second appearance in the main game.
Yep.
He doesn't have to be present. His name is dropped a couple of times, but you recognize that he's really behind all this stuff. And again, his motives are to do his own thing. But between the fact that he works with people he doesn't trust, and he's certainly not somebody that you'd want to trust, you have no idea what he's actually planning. So it really, again, becomes a situation of this villain is such a great villain because not only are they powerful, they are just so mysterious. You have no idea what to expect because you literally don't even know what they're trying to do. You just know it's bad. So that, I think, that level of mystery is really something that can heighten the situation as long as it's drawn out properly and not just sort of dropped off a cliff at the end.
Or, in this case, a volcano, as was the case in Resident Evil 5. But...
Well, yeah, but I mean, sometimes a volcano is necessary. Look at the end of Terminator 2, okay? The volcano is going to be the alternate ending there.
Okay. Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Still a great movie, but at that point, it's okay, we built this guy up this much. How do we kill him? Because you think about all the other things that he survived. You think about all the things that Liquid survived. Realistically, dying because of a virus seems like kind of a cop-out. But, at the same time, it's okay, well, if you keep making them stronger, eventually you have to find a way to kill them, and then that just becomes harder and harder. So, yeah, I'm okay with the volcano thing. It was excessive, and he needed to be killed off, but if this was the only way they could think of doing it, sure, let's go with the volcano. That's fine.
And so, I think on that happy note, because why not, we will cut the first half here, and in our second half we will continue the discussion, bringing up more famous villains, memorable villains. That'll be on our second half, but in the meantime you have some music, and we'll be back. Welcome back to Downloadable Content, talking about gaming's greatest villains. We're all still here. We have not been annihilated. We have not been pontificated to death. No lectures by every villain out there, going on for 20 minutes about how they're the supreme being and how they will destroy everything. But, speaking of which, I just finished Xenoblade Chronicles, and my god, does the antagonist, Zanza, oh my god, he loves to talk. I don't know if that's a JRPG thing, or just in general, but my god, in the time it takes for them to just keep spouting off about how mighty they are, you could have killed them a dozen times over, or they could have destroyed the world a billion times over.
I think it's a general thing with, I don't want to say JRPG thing, I want to say it's a general J thing, we'll call it that, where the final bosses of these kinds of games, whether they're RPGs or strategy games or strategy RPGs or whatever, I've noticed that, where they go on for quite a long time and they justify their evil behavior, or they justify how they're going to destroy the world and why they're doing it, and it goes on for 10, 20 minutes. It's just one of those things I've noticed about the culture, and maybe it's something to do with the culture. I don't know. I really don't. I have noticed it though with a lot of different kind of games from them.
Which is why when I get silent antagonists, it's so nice. Like Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. He doesn't have a word of dialogue in Silent Hill 2. Not a one. But you don't want to be near him. And the funny thing is that Pyramid Head only appears in one game, yet he's kind of become the symbol of the entire series. Which I think...
as somebody who hasn't played the Silent Hill games, I had no idea that Pyramid Head had only appeared in one game. I assumed he was a series staple because of how commonly referenced Pyramid Head is.
You've never played the games there?
Nah.
Wow. Oh, I love those games. Those are amazing games.
I'm not a horror guy.
Pyramid Head was only in Silent Hill 2. But he's that much of an asshole that he's become he's on all of the promotional materials for the series.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he's in the game is that, again, spoiler alert, but then again, Silent Hill 2 came out over a decade ago, so, shut up, is that he's a manifestation of the main character's subconscious, because James wants to be punished for killing his wife. And Pyramid Head, and again, he's completely silent, but no, you don't want to be near him. He's got weapons of mass death.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Weapons of mass death, and no.
I'll never forget the first time I saw Pyramid Head in a Silent Hill game. I literally was glued to my TV and I could not look away because I was like, "What is this?"
Well, he kind of makes a dramatic first appearance, raping one of the mannequins while your character is hiding in a nearby closet.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well then.
Well, that's one way to make an entrance.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to fight that? And I find him more menacing than another antagonist who also chases you periodically throughout the game. That would be Nemesis from Resident Evil 3.
Hate Nemesis.
After you beat the game 10 or so times, he gets predictable, obviously, but Nemesis, you knew when Nemesis was coming after you because the music would change. That was your tip-off. Pyramid Head, you have none of that. There is no visual or audio cue to tell you, oh shit, he is right near me.
Well, I think, kind of just exploring, and here's another, game that kind of played around with the music as well, was certainly Resident Evil 4. There were times early in the game, especially, where you'd have audio and visual cues that you were in trouble because the music would change, and then there would be times later on in the game where you wouldn't have those cues. You would just sort of be in trouble, and there wouldn't be any music to accompany it, or there'd be music playing and there wouldn't be anybody around. So, the game did start kind of messing with your expectations at that point. So I think having the cues can work both ways, because realistically, and again, I haven't played it, so I can't, assess the situation as such, but if there were rooms where you walked in and you heard the Nemesis music, but you couldn't see Nemesis, that's got to be terrifying after a little while. It's just, what's coming and you can't do anything to stop it, and literally your only option is to still progress towards whatever the problem is. Yeah, that's frustrating, that's scary, that's like, oh, well, shit, I'm gonna die now. So
you're rapidly checking your inventory for as many aid sprays, herbs, and you can...
Right, it absolutely plays a part in that. So I think that can go both ways. Just
absolutely. That's...
What do you think, game designer?
He's calling you out now.
The remarkably silent game designer. Will you validate my points, or am I completely off?
No, I will. I have to say, having listened to this exchange, it actually brought up a few things for me. I mean, in our games, Chronicles of the Dark Lord games, we often use music cues, for denoting whether a boss or a villain is nearby or is about to, something bad's about to happen. But then, not to give much of a spoiler, but in the upcoming sequel, there's a particular scene where I got inspired by Silent Hill, ironically enough.
Oh, good.
Where there's no cue. Something really bad happens. It happens very suddenly, and it's not gory, but horror. True terror, horror type thing. And it happens so quickly. And I again, inspired by Silent Hill in that regard, but it's like, when people's, when, like what you said about the music cue, how it can be worked to in a good way. Absolutely. But, there are times when, if you're going for a powerful moment, or you're going for something that, where you want the player to literally go, what the fuck? Then, no music cue. Nothing at all. Just spring it on them real quick. It depends upon what kind of atmosphere you're going for. I mean, if you're going for more of a, if you're going for like an homage type thing like we did with the first game, if you're going for an homage where everything had a music cue, go for it. I can tell you plenty games, I'm sure Brian can as well, where especially RPG, like old school RPG games where everything had a music cue to it. I mean, whether it was, good music, it was evil music, or it was a boss, or it was a character's theme or something, there was always music to accompany it. So in games like that, it's expected, but, in like a survival horror game, I can tell you right now, when we do our own survival, and yes, we will be doing our own survival horror game eventually, when we do a game like that, I'm going to probably take cues from Silent Hill and games like that, where the less music, the better in our case, because I want the player to truly be terrified. And if I hear a music cue, at least for me, if I hear a music cue, I don't want the tip off, because then I'm not scared. And the point of a survival horror for me is, is atmosphere, ambience, immersing the player in the experience, and scaring the absolute shit out of them.
I don't know, Ben, does that sufficiently answer your question?
Yeah, my point was validated. I'm good.
Okay.
That's all I wanted. You could have saved yourself the trouble by just saying you're right, but listen, that was a fantastic, and seriously, that was a great explanation. And yeah, it just really, you're right. It entirely depends upon the mood they're trying to set with that particular moment, the mood they're trying to set as it contributes to the overall arc, the overall narrative. Again, I don't want to keep harping on Resident Evil 4, but after a time, it was not so much, okay, not that you're going to be scared of stuff that's happening. Now it's just more of an, oh, crap, now stuff's happening again. So it really does depend on what mood you're going for at that moment and in the overall story. But
you're right, Dan.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm trying to think of another really moody villain or just good villain, and
I've got one. We're a little bit more recent.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna go to BioShock, the first BioShock game. The characters of Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine.
Sure. Okay.
Well, Andrew Ryan is a character whom you do not actually indirectly fight. I mean, I'm hoping one of you at least has played BioShock, but if not, that's okay.
Don't judge me.
I played and beaten all the BioShock games.
Okay, so then Andrew Ryan is a character whom he created Rapture, and through the story you find out exactly what sort of character you are as the player.
A dick.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, if you put it that way, sure.
Yeah. But, for the first half of the game, you're guided by a character named Atlas.
Oh.
You're guided by a character...
Because the Randian images weren't strong enough.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean...
Ayn Rand,
yeah.
Andrew Ryan,
yeah.
Atlas.
Yeah.
No, keep going, guys. Come on, let's
keep going. How much more of Atlas Shrugged can you throw into this game? But you're guided by a character named Atlas, and Atlas comes off as this character who's this poor, destitute. He's been fucked over by Andrew Ryan, and for the first half of the game, you are led to believe that this man is a capitalist megalomaniac.
Spoiler.
And in some parts, he is. Especially if you've read the prequel novel. But then you find out that Atlas is actually Frank Fontaine. That's a big spoiler, so if you haven't played BioShock, I'm not apologizing.
If you haven't played BioShock, there's no reason to.
There's plenty of reason to, believe
No, I
me.
know, I'm teasing.
But you find out that this character, Atlas, is actually a front for the character known as Frank Fontaine, who is an asshole. Your player character is a dick, yes. But Frank Fontaine is a bigger dick.
I was kind of hoping you were going to go with asshole, because then there'd be a great analogy here about you fucking the other guy, but anyway.
It says Rapture After Dark.
Well, I mean, the way you're setting it up, yeah, it kind of does sound like it. Get the creepy music on. Hi, and welcome to Rapture After Dark. I got nothing. I was hoping one of you would pick that up from me.
Oh, there is a strip club in Rapture. I forget what the name of it is.
Because of course there is.
Yeah, there is a strip club. You're right.
I forget the name of it, but it's the
If
place.
they like the dancer's performance, they throw dollars. If they don't like the dancer's performance, they throw bees. What could possibly go wrong?
Because the woman that Andrew Ryan knocks up is a stripper. But anyway, you find out that Frank Fontaine is actually he's a crime boss, and all he wants is just to fuck over Andrew Ryan, just so he can claim Rapture for himself. But the way the game unfolds that is very, very interesting. And so that by the time you finally get to him in all of his plasmid, you think HGH is bad, in all of his glory at the end of the game, it makes for a really interesting final battle, because it's he's all the while yelling at you, and I'm sorry, the throw bees plasmid, just every time you use that in the game, I always thought of Eddie Izzard. You're covered in bees! But every single time, and finally, and then, Rapture gets taken over by Sophia Lamb in the second game, and she's like the opposite of Andrew Ryan. But rather than go into an entirely detailed plot summary of the first 2 games, I'll cut it there.
And, I mean, actually, to follow up with that, I thought Comstock was really a great villain in the third in Bioshock Infinite.
Yes.
Especially, I mean, representing what he was, and obviously the imagery of that game is what it is, and we can certainly get into what the message of the game was at a later date. But, you know, in terms of forgetting the message for a second, let's just talk about the characterization of the villain.
Yep.
You know, I thought here was a villain who was powerful in a different sense. He was powerful with followers rather than with, you know, necessarily real actual power. So it's an interesting dynamic here because you have a man who has people who are willing to kill and die for him versus you, a guy who has these seemingly supernatural abilities, and it leads to an interesting dynamic of what is power. And then obviously, you know, the story plays out the way the story plays out, and the connection between the characters, which I'm not going to spoil, you know, becomes more and more apparent and just sheds even more light on the entire situation. But it just really became an interesting kind of struggle. He was always there and always present, and you felt his influence on everything, kind of in the same way you did with, say, Ganondorf in the adult world of Ocarina of Time. But at the same time, you know, you still felt you had the power to fight back, and you could also simultaneously feel completely helpless. So I thought that was a really great dynamic between characters and a great villain.
That is actually a very interesting point you bring up. I mean, you know, when you think of villains, you think that they have some sort of ability or power or something to do their, you know, whatever they set out to do. But you're right. I didn't think about the fact that Comstock in Bioshock Infinite, he doesn't have these superpowers of any kind. He has faith, and he has his followers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know, leads to the other, you know, because religion is a central theme in that game.
Yeah, well, I don't. The subject matter of that game gets very touchy very quickly.
Yes.
So I don't want to get into that because that will lead to a lot of debates. But what I would say is, agree or disagree with the message, which, you know, certainly you will. The way that this character used some of his imagery and used his position was, I think, clearly an abuse. I don't think many people would disagree with that context at the very least. So whether or not you think he had good intentions is obviously an entirely different story.
Here's another villain for you. I mean, we've been talking about games that have been largely story-based, that are very narrative-heavy. What about fighting games? The first one that sprang to mind for me was Shao Kahn, Mortal Kombat.
You mean Ultimate Dick?
Yes, I do believe that is what he meant. Ultimate Dick.
I don't think that's how he's announced in the games, but
listen, if you have the opportunity to call yourself Ultimate Dick, you definitely have your followers announce you as the Ultimate Dick. I mean, it's just, you don't even care, because there's 2 ways that can be read. Neither one's really all that bad. I mean, if you're a bad guy, either way, that's a positive.
Yeah, Ultimate Dick wins fatality. You know.
I mean, don't get me wrong. You're giving your enemies plenty of ammunition to make fun of you with, but as you are the Ultimate Dick, you will likely fuck them over anyway. So,
point taken. But yes. Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat. I mean, for me, that was the fighting, and still is. For me, the fighting series that I grew up with, it's my favorite. It beats Street Fighter, Tekken, Soul Calibur. That is my fighting series, and Shao Kahn, it's like, die already, because
it wasn't even just that he was good. He lived to make fun of you. Like that was really what was so great about him. Was like, you know, the 4 fights he'd say you will die, and then when you lose, you just hear you suck.
You will never win.
And I have Mortal Kombat, the arcade collection on my PS3. You know, if when you were actually fighting him, like in Mortal Kombat 3, and you know some of you're still trying to win, you know. But yes, he would make fun. I think the narrator, the precursor to the narrator, making fun of you.
Well, I mean, yeah, that level of dickishness can be fun a lot of times in games. My favorite example of a game being a dick to you is unquestionably Devil May Cry 3. How do you unlock easy mode in Devil May Cry? You keep dying.
Really?
Yeah, if you, after the first 3 times you die, that's how you unlock easy mode.
Wow.
Penny Arcade had a great comic about it where one of the guys was playing with his, and the system is sitting next to him, is like, oh, look, you died so much you unlocked easy mode. Maybe you should keep going and just unlock ultimate pussy mode first. Which, to be fair, that was a really hard game, but they were not doing you any favors by unlocking easy mode after dying 3 times. Anyway.
That is one of the ways a game will troll you. I can imagine.
But that's what Shao Kahn really is. I'm sorry to interject, but Shao Kahn is a troll. He's a huge troll.
And he appears in so many games. He made his appearance in 2. And 2, 3, Ultimate 3, Trilogy. He wasn't in 4. He was not in...
I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I'm going to be more impressed if you tell me you already managed to pull up the list on Wikipedia or if you're doing this off the top of your head.
This is off the top of my head.
Okay. You're a sad person.
Yes. Occasionally I am. I told you, I love this series.
Yes, we can see that.
He's in the most recent Mortal Kombat game.
Where he's a complete and total dick.
Oh yeah, he's even more of a dick in the reboot, because when he wins, not only does he make fun of you, but crawling on hands and knees, sidling up to him, is this incredibly scantily clad, big-breasted mistress.
Yep.
Just to further rub it in your face.
He's such... This is why I call him the ultimate dick. He is the ultimate dick.
And after he's done killing you, he's going to use that ultimate dick on this, big-breasted slave that just sidled up to him.
Yeah, and she was gorgeous too, but yeah. But since you brought Shao Kahn up, and like you, Mortal Kombat's one of my favorite series. I love Mortal Kombat. But although I do love Street Fighter, especially Street Fighter 2, that's one of my personal faves.
Of course. Okay, I had to. Sorry.
Of course. But
thank you, Raul Julia.
Shao Kahn, he is pretty much the embodiment of fuck your shit up on any given day. He doesn't have so much of a story arc as just, I'm the badass, I rule all. If you think you're gonna, put a wrench into what I'm doing, fuck you. I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show it to you real damn hard, and he does it. So it's like, he obviously does a really good story, especially in the reboot from Mortal Kombat. But
yeah, in the original story, Shao Kahn is the original story. If you do not remember way back in the early '90s, is that Outworld wants to conquer Earthrealm, and in order to do that, you need to win 10 straight Mortal Kombats, and they've already won 9, which is one of the things the movie got correct.
The movie.
The movie got correct. And, of course, Liu Kang does his thing and breaks the 9 wins in a row. And Shao Kahn just decides, and this is also true, another thing the movie's got right, Shao Kahn goes, alright, you know what? We had 9 in a row, and now we lost. You know what? Fuck it! I'm just gonna go in and invade anyway!
That does seem about right for him.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does, and he's like, no, I want, and then you get the impression that he's kind of a petulant child. I want Earth, but no, the fact of the matter is, yes, he is a dick. M. Bison, and he's a bit of an asshole too, but Shao Kahn takes the cake. Really.
He really does. Like you said, M. Bison, he's an asshole, and in battle, he can be a real asshole, but with Shao, for some reason, every single game that I've ever gone against Shao Kahn in, every single Mortal Kombat, no matter what game it is, know if it's especially. Although I will say number 2 was, I think he was the bitchiest, but that's just me. But he is, he's such a troll in battle. I can't explain it enough. The guy lives to torture you.
I want to know where the hell he's hiding that hammer. But
thank you.
Where the hell?
With the large-breasted, scantily clad female, but that's it.
Phrasing. But... Holy shit, phrasing!
I mean, but you look at his story, and he doesn't. And actually, his story, even in the reboot, his particular story, it's not that it's not strong, because it does have its strengths, but story-wise, I think, his arc is just very one-dimensional. He's a very one-dimensional villain, but then that's also why he works.
In this particular instance, I mean, it's a fighting game, so you can't really get too plot-heavy, but keep going with your point. Why do you think it works, even though...
you just actually made my point for me. No,
yay!
He in a fighting game, you're not expecting something like with a narrative-heavy game. You're not expecting, Odysseus from, the reasoning behind, or the Iliad, the reasoning behind, his motives of what he does. He's a badass villain-type person who just wants to fuck shit up. He doesn't care about anything. He has no regard for human life. So, he lost one tournament, and he said, no, fuck that. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do because I'm Shao Kahn. It's as simple as that. And that works for him. Because if let's say his story was more complex, his background and whatnot, I don't think it'd work as well. I think it would take away from who he is as a character. So in that regard, less is more.
Okay. Very valid point. Absolutely. I know, Ben, you wanted to talk about licensed villains.
I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, the problem there just sort of becomes like, with licensed villains, they kind of either can be, at best, just as interesting as their movie or comic book counterparts. And I mean, we all lived through the 80s and 90s flux of just endless platformer, brawler, shooter games based on properties that had nothing to do with them. Like the NES Batman game where every weapon is a gun, which really didn't make any sense at all. But I don't know. I mean, can you think of any villains that were more interesting as a video game character than they were like when you saw them in any other media?
I don't play very many licensed games.
Because they're terrible?
Because they're usually terrible. Although, speaking of terrible, I had a game on the PS2 called Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. And it was an RPG, obviously based on, the movies had just come out, and so everyone was trying to cash in on licensing rights. You were playing as a party that they were not too far behind the Fellowship.
The Not Fellowship.
Yeah, the Not Fellowship.
I got this game.
And your final boss is the Eye of Sauron itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Alright, so here's the thing. How the fuck did this group of people get through Pelennor Fields and climb up the Black Tower without anyone noticing? Did they all sneak in on cardboard boxes?
Yeah, probably.
I will say, and you're absolutely right, especially in terms of storytelling, it made no sense, because literally you go from the fight with I think the Lich King. I think.
Yep.
Or whatever his name is. You go directly from that on the Pelennor Fields automatically to the final boss.
To the Eye of Sauron. No break.
It's Sauron.
Suddenly the screen immediately cuts to black, and suddenly you're on top of the Black Tower fighting the Eye itself. And the Eye is a real letdown.
Yeah, I beat that boss very quickly, actually.
Yeah, so did I, and I'm just like, oh.
I mean, but, I will say, and maybe this is just me, that game is a guilty pleasure of mine.
I played that game and I went, oh, it's Final Fantasy X in Middle Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It plays almost exactly like it.
Except that it's so easy. It is so completely easy.
It's a joke, and luckily, your characters aren't figments of someone's imagination, and, you don't get that sort of, my daddy abandoned me, from any of the characters.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Speaking of asshole villains, I'm gonna shit on Final Fantasy X for a second.
Oh, shit!
I'm gonna shit
just a second, really?
I'm gonna shit on Final Fantasy X for several seconds. All right, you're okay. Seymour, the character of Seymour, who you fight 4 times in this game.
Yeah.
You fight him 4 times, and the first time actually kills him. The other 3 are just him going la 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 la, and with increasing difficulty and hairdo each time you fight him. There isn't enough product in the world for Seymour's hair to look the way it does. I'm sorry, but the degree of difficulty between the second time you fight him and the third time you fight him goes from pathetically easy to, holy shit, this is practically impossible. I'm like, whoa, bit of a jump there. It requires you... I'm like, oh, great. Now I have to go back, level grind, get all of my Aeons into overdrive before this battle. Because it's the only way you're going to beat him. And the 4th time, he's just, oh, by the 4th time, just go away.
That was one character that seriously overstayed his welcome.
And then finally you get to the battle with Jecht. Finally, son meets daddy. And, finally, the son meets daddy, and oh, the wangst. So much wangst. It's on the same level of annoyance as Jack. Do you remember what day it is today?
Yeah.
That level of Metal Gear Solid 2 codec conversation. It's just like, I want to throw this controller, but these controllers are expensive. I want to break my TV, but I don't have $300 to get a new one.
And I will say, as a battle Jack, or the final Aeon, or whatever the hell you want to call him, he was very easy.
He was easy, yes, but that's not my issue. It's just, oh my god, that game. And Square decided, oh, let's remake that, give it an HD remake. But that's a whole nother rant.
That and 10 too, but I won't go into that one either.
However, I think the most annoying antagonist of all, and we've neglected to mention this throughout this entire podcast, has to be, hands down, the dog from Duck Hunt.
Oh god.
I don't really know that counts as a villain.
It does in my book!
I mean, that's definitely a dick, but I'm not really sure that's a villain specifically. I mean, I would think, if anything, the ducks. Technically, you're the bad guy. All right, those ducks are just trying to live, and all you're doing is shooting them. And really, the duck is just defending them, or pleased about the fact that you couldn't kill them. So, if anybody's the villain in that game, it's you.
Wow.
Ben's getting psychological here.
Mind blown.
We're getting deep.
We're getting deep here. On Duck Hunt. Deep on Duck Hunt. That should be the title right there.
Deep on Duck Hunt. Deep Hunt.
Deep Hunt.
No, that doesn't sound wrong. Let's not go with that. I mean, yeah, it's just, think about it from that angle for a second. It's literally, these ducks are just trying to fly away, and the dog is your little bumbling assistant who helps you, and he chases them out, and it's up to you to shoot them. And when you don't, he laughs at you. He's like the great cartoon villain sidekick to your maniacal 80s cartoon bad guy.
But I think it's his laugh itself that is
again dickish.
Yeah, it's
and they conveniently turn off your NES zapper for that.
Yeah.
I mean, Nintendo wasn't okay with many things in the 80s. You think they'd let you shoot a dog?
They let you shoot ducks.
Which are not a dog. The Humane Society is going to be like, yeah, duck hunting actually happens. That's the point of the game. But you can't kill a dog.
Well, I mean, all I gotta say is Pokemon, PETA in the same sentence. And there you go.
PETA. I'm sorry. Listen, I understand the organization has some great ideas, but they've just become, like, they protest anything now. They've just become such a joke that it's like, I can't take you seriously. You could protest anything, and it makes me want to actually ignore your protest and support that thing at this point. Just because, like, the outrage over everything exists. Mario has been protested by PETA.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake, people. I don't think anybody in the world assumes that if you jump on a turtle 3 times, you can ride his shell like a fucking skateboard, okay? It's clear. It's just a video game.
Silliness aside over the Duck Hunt dog, I think the last antagonist I'm going to mention, just because, for time's sake, I really liked his character a lot in Mass Effect, and I'm talking about the Elusive Man.
Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
Because Ben, obviously you've played the entire trilogy. Tanya, have you played?
I have not played the third one. I played the first two.
Okay, then I will not spoil the third game for you.
Oh.
No.
Sorry. Well, did you watch that video I sent you, by the way?
Not yet.
Oh my god.
Not yet.
You're gonna laugh very hard with that.
Not yet. But it's very interesting over the course of the series, what the goals of the Elusive Man are compared to the goals of Shepard. And
I mean, again, it's like the Wesker thing. The enigmatic villain is the most fascinating because you don't even know, like, he'll tell you that you've got the same goals, and in some sense you do, but, like, really, what's his larger plan? And, so he's an interesting guy to kind of hang around with, and Martin Sheen's performance certainly makes the character.
Absolutely.
Oh, Martin Sheen's performance.
Absolutely. I mean, well, I thought that other main antagonists in the Mass Effect series, Saren and Harbinger, they were pretty cool, but they felt one-dimensional, whereas the Elusive Man is an incredibly multifaceted character. And I can't say too much without spoiling the third game, because Tanya hasn't played it.
I'll get to it.
Play the game.
I've heard that the third game is great, but the ending is the most controversial ending. And
that is completely up to interpretation. I really enjoyed the ending. I know many people who have not. I know many people who have. So once you beat the third game, Tanya, we can have that discussion.
Okay.
We could have an entire episode discussing that. But
yes.
Yeah, we could. What did we think of the ending of Mass Effect 3? It could be an entire episode.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And nothing would get settled, and it would be the longest show ever, and it would have the record for most curse words by a long shot.
Because I know, Ben, you weren't too thrilled by it, and I enjoyed
That's
it.
Mild.
Yeah.
What I will say, and I'm trying to say this without giving anything away, the build-up to payoff, okay, was terrible, because you could see how the story was sort of progressing, and you could see the direction things were headed, and then EA has this thing where they like to come in and take something that's not broken and fix it. And Brian, you could probably think of a few specific story moments in the third game that sort of had, like, their own... They just existed because they felt they needed to make these kinds of scenes exist.
Yeah.
I think you know what I'm talking about. And then they sort of... So many things just sort of happened, and it's like, okay, well, why if this is affecting the character now, which is legitimate, like, why would this have not, like, this isn't new. Why should this have not weighed on anybody in the first place? And then the final ultimate payoff and the problem with these moralistic choice games is that the ending frequently also requires you to make a choice. And generally, even with BioWare games, they're very black and white. And at least this one wasn't quite as black and white, but there were definitely moments of it where it's like, okay, but it's not just that. It's not just that simple, but you're making it that simple, which is part of why I didn't like the game, because there were really degrees that could have been explored, and they just flat out said, no, it's either A or B. So that was what I really found trouble with, if that's vague enough. But
yeah, that actually does make quite a bit of sense to me, and I haven't played it yet, so yeah, I'm gonna have to though.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I know many who enjoyed the ending, and I know many who have disliked the ending vehemently, and I know many who were just like, eh. So I mean, it's completely, when you play it, Tanya, let me know, and
I will.
We'll get your thoughts on that. So, I think that's gonna wind down. Unless any of you have any other memorable antagonists to throw out there.
I have two that real quick.
Go ahead.
The first one is actually from Radiant Historia on DS. Because you meet the main antagonist within the first 5 minutes of the game, and he's your boss, and you think he's on your side, and then literally throughout the course, this is huge spoilers, but throughout the course of the game, you find out no, he actually is your antagonist, and it's just so wonderfully developed and done. It's one of my favorite RPGs is Radiant Historia. Great game. Definitely underrated. Needs to be played more. That's one villain I would say, and another villain is from this very kind of unknown series. It's called Chronicles of a Dark Lord.
I wonder who made that.
I don't know who made that.
I would be interested to learn more about this.
I did say I would give Tanya a plug. I wasn't expecting her to segue into that, but
well done.
But I will say, I will say that I do think that the character of Antocalius, who is the main antagonist of the first trilogy, because there will be more trilogies with different kinds of story going on, but Antocalius is a very complex character. He starts out, as a quote-unquote good guy, and it kind of disintegrates from there. But I think he's got kind of a hybridization between a Kefka and maybe a Golbez. He's kind of like the hybridization there going on. So I really like him. I like doing scenes with him in it because he's got this. He's a bastard. He's an asshole, but
I know.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's a royal bastard, but he he presents his motives, and actually this whole war thing going on with him is actually like it's like one big ass tantrum from him because he couldn't have what he wanted. So it is what it is. And I guess that's just kind of how I'm going to leave it off on that. But as for Radiant Historia, the main villain there definitely needs to be added to the top 10 list for villains. He is extraordinarily done.
His name isn't Kane, is it?
No.
Another sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Yeah. I have 3, one of which I'm going to just barely, like the first one I'll barely mention, the second one I'll talk about a little bit, and the third one doesn't need an explanation. So first off, Arthas from the Warcraft series. Not entirely a primary antagonist, but certainly a bad guy, and an interesting story of trying to do the right thing and road to hell being paved with good intentions. Virgil from the Devil May Cry series, who only appears in a few of the games, but especially the most recent one, the rebooted DMC from Ninja Theory, which I really loved. Very interesting take, very in-depth take on the character, way more than we've normally gotten from him, and it was really cool to kind of see. And then the last one that I'm surprised hasn't come up, but does not need any explanation at all, GLaDOS.
Duh.
I mean, talk about a character with just pure motives. I mean, it's literally a computer that may or may not be trying to kill you at any given moment. It's you don't have to wonder what her motives are. She wants to use you as a test subject and occasionally a thing to help her not die. So, yeah, you don't get much more pure than that.
Yeah.
And she's just honest and open about it, and here's a villain you're constantly in contact with who can be a little bit of a bitch, but at the same time is just honest and blatant and just kind of mostly sort of tells you how she sees things.
Yeah, she just, and occasionally just wants to give you some deadly neurotoxin. Just
Or cake.
Or cake.
Or cake.
Or cake, yes.
So.
That's all right. Yeah, no one mentioned GLaDOS.
Yeah, I don't get that. I was all of a sudden just like, huh.
Well, that'll happen sometimes.
Yes.
It's like nobody mentioned Pius Augustus, but then again, not too many people I know have played Eternal Darkness. But
may the rats eat your eyes.
So.
Well, I think Dennis Dyack was the real villain there. But that's
Touché!
Who said that? That was rude.
Touché!
That was great.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Well done. So we've come around to the near the end of this, but before we completely put a bow on it, I want to give Ben and Tanya some time to plug their own ventures, because why the hell not? They do things, and I want them to talk about them. So I know, Ben, you recently are now a writer on Sprites and Dice, so...
Yes, I am a contributing writer. I don't know if that's actually my title, but I'm going to go with it. A contributing writer for Sprites and Dice, which is spritesanddice.blogspot.com. Wyatt and I... Blogspot? I thought so. Wyatt, who's also been on the podcast numerous times, started this website with one of his friends, John Glover, who has also been on the show. We're trying to ramp up with the amount of content that we have. It's a little bit of a blend between card games and obviously dice games and video games, and so just gaming as a whole general culture and from all angles. So definitely check us out. Please comment if you have articles that you'd like to see, or different types of posts that you'd like to see. You can contact us. The email address there is spritesanddice@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @spritesanddice. And of course, we have a Facebook page. So, yeah, check it out.
Nicely done. And Tanya, on to you.
Well, as I'm sure your listeners probably already know, I'm the CEO of Kasara Studios.
No!
Yes.
You?
Maybe. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to check later on.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. Listen, I thought it was somebody else. I apologize.
I don't know. But no, we are the creators of the Chronicles of the Dark Lord series. We currently have episode 1 with what we call the Nightmare Vision DLC out. You can find that on Desura. You can pretty soon you'll be able to find it on Steam once we get greenlit. Woot! We are currently once we get greenlit on Steam, you'll be able to actually purchase it on there. It should be great. We're currently on Desura. We're on Amazon. We're also on Gamersgate, Shiny Loot, and pretty much every other major distributor out there. We currently have episode 2 in production. We're in the final stages of that. We're going to have that out by this fall. We're looking at sometime in probably September, maybe October, but that's what we're looking at right now for a release window for episode 2, War of the Abyss. Promises to be a pretty spectacular event because episode 2 is going to wipe the floor with episode 1. And, that's pretty much what we're going on right now. We have a couple other projects in effect right now in production. We have Shenandoah Zero Chronicle, which is a prequel to episode 1. It's our first 8-bit title, done in the style of a Game Boy Color type title. And, it's going to be pretty cool. So we have other projects going along. We have some action RPG, some platformers. So check us out. We're on Facebook, YouTube. We have a Twitter, and we're very active on Twitter usually, so, give us a holler and, come follow us. We're pretty cool people, except we're kind of insane, but, kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
What's your website? Is it KisarthStudios.com or?
It's Kisarth.com. That's
Okay.
KISARETH.com.
And there you go. And lastly, my usual plugs. Again, downloadable content can be found on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. And you can get in touch with us a variety of ways. Facebook.com/DLContent, at Twitter at DLContent, on Tumblr, dlcpodcast.tumblr.com, email dlcontent1@gmail.com. Let us know what other famous villains stick out in your mind, memorable video game antagonists. We'd love to hear them. So it remains for me to thank Ben and Tanya for appearing on this episode. Thank you both very much.
Thanks for having me.
Hope to see you guys back hopefully soon. I'm Brian. Have a good one, everybody.